Good morning, everyone. This is John from Reset. Okay, I'm excited. Today we are talking to the city manager of Folsom, Elaine Andersen. Give her a big round of applause. Yay. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, good morning. Nice to see you, John.
Okay, it's busy times for you right now, right?
100%. Absolutely. These are crazy times. They're affecting us in all different ways, but yes, here at the city, it is a particularly busy time.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do? Your job seems so wide in scope. If you look up the definition of a city manager on the web, you go, oh, wow, they actually do a ton.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say there's no, there's sort of textbook definition of city manager, but I think every city manager is different. But in essence, it's probably one of the most diverse jobs you could find, honestly, in terms of what you might be tackling on a daily basis, and everything is different. I'm a fairly organized person. I kind of come in each morning with, a laid out set of things that I'm going to check off. And it seems like by the end of the day, that list didn't get checked off, but the list over here with the 50 other things did get checked off. We're running a police department here. We're running a fire department. We're making sure you've got clean water. We're making sure you don't have potholes in your street. We are running an aquatic center and a sports complex and sports camps and a preschool. And you can imagine the diversity of all of that requires a whole lot of attention and activities and decisions on a minute by minute basis, especially when you're trying to do a lot of that right in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciate the no potholes comment, because I spent some time in Jackson, Michigan, and potholes are like the swimming pools of the city. They're huge. They will swallow your car whole. They're horrible. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Well, thanks for what you do. Tell us a little bit about your family and your history here in Folsom.
Yeah, so my husband and I, probably about 30 years ago, decided to move up to a tiny little apartment in Folsom. And it was mostly because we found that we were spending almost every weekend in Folsom anyway. We were kind of obsessed with Sutter Street. We would love to come up on weekends and we would prowl. And that was kind of the older days when it was almost all antique shops.
Oh, yeah.
And we would just kind of prowl through, and we just thought that was the coolest thing, because that's something different for, my generation of like, just something different to look through and to poke around. I am the grandchild of a hardware store owner. So so I just love to kind of, go through little trinkets and, look at stuff. And I think it's just in my genetics. We loved all that. We loved the chips and salsa at Hacienda. That didn't hurt. And we just at some point decided, heck, let's just get an apartment up there. So we did that. And then in 1996, we saved up and bought our first small home. And now we are in our second home. And it's just, we've raised our kids here. We have 2 adult children. We have Ryan, who is 23. He graduated from UCLA last year. And he is on his first job working for UCLA athletics. He's quite obsessed with sports. And so that's his gig. And then my daughter is a junior in college at UC Santa Cruz, and she is determined to be a college professor. So, so there's, so anyway, they were born and raised here in Folsom, and, we're just grateful to Folsom in every single way, because it's given us so much personally. And then to 15 years ago about land a job in Folsom. I had previously been commuting down to Sacramento for 15 years. It was just, I just couldn't believe the symmetry of all that coming together. That was very special and very amazing to all of us and our family.
Well, good job on the smart kids, Mom and Dad.
I don't take credit. They are unto themselves. As you know, each kid you have is just different, and they surprise you, and you kind of expect they're going to be, it's like approximately the same genetics. They're going to be about the same. I have very different children from each other, and they're different from us as well. And they just have special gifts that I'm astonished by all the time. So they're blessings for sure.
I would really surprise my mom and dad if I went into sports. I was the don't give the ball to Voelz. I was that kid. I'm horrible. Elaine, what's the biggest part of your job? We talked about it being so diverse, but what do you find yourself spending the most time on? Probably pandemic stuff right now, but
Yeah, right now, I mean, right now it's, and this is not patting myself on the back or being dramatic or anything, but right now I'm literally working 16-hour days. I mean, and that would be a minimum, and sometimes even cutting into those 8 hours of sleep. So it's just, and it doesn't stop. Like you might think, oh, in the early days, you know, when they were telling us to shut down everything, it must have gotten super fast and, you know, crazy, and it must be settled down now. But it's just every single day there's something that needs to be decided at a really high level and executed very quickly. So right now, yes, that's how it goes. In regular pre-COVID life, as if I can vaguely remember even what that looked like, I think we're all struggling with that. I would say I spend most of my time listening to people, whether it's employees or business owners or residents or my peers, you know, in other cities, and problem solving. I mean, it really just comes down to that. It's sort of taking in a lot of information, you know, kind of doing my own version of data analyst, you know, analysis in my brain, and then making decisions, and whatever components it takes to do that is what I spend most of my time doing. It's the stuff that doesn't get solved at the departmental level or the, you know, division level or departmental level, and comes up to the city manager's office here,
okay.
but I spend my day plowing through.
Okay. So you're like mom, like the kids are having an argument and it's like, all right, mom's got the final decision.
It can be, yeah, it can be. And I do find my predecessor was Everett Palmer, who was our city manager. And he told me that I would be very good at this job because I've raised teenagers. And I kind of laughed at him at the time, but I honestly have to say that there are a lot of skills that you employ as city manager, of just kind of trying to go, no, wait, okay, let's talk about this. Let's sort this through. What's really reality here, and what's maybe a little bit of drama, you know, let's find a meeting in the middle. It's a lot more soft skills than you would imagine. It's not necessarily, you know, the, you know, deep mathematical fiscal analysis skills. I mean, all those are super important, but there's a lot more soft skills to being city manager than I think most people realize.
Huh. Now you served as assistant city manager and deputy city manager at some point, right? So what's the difference between those?
Yeah. So when I was working for the city of Sacramento when I was recruited to come work up here, and I started in the city manager's office working directly for the then city manager, Martha Lofgren. And I was a special projects manager. And that just meant like whatever the heck she wanted to throw my way, I just did it. And then I was later promoted to deputy city manager and then assistant city manager. And then the council was so kind to make me city manager. And I would say the distinctions between them, it's more just the levels of, you know, responsibility just amp up with each level, and the levels of complexity of what you're working on. I mean, it's not, if you looked at the scope of work, they're all just generally the same. It's just, instead of working with smaller departments, you're working with bigger departments. Instead of smaller issues, you're working with, you know, really crazily complex issues that take, you know, sometimes years to solve. So that's how you kind of move up through the ranks in a city manager's office.
That makes sense. And you're a smarty pants. Like you can take care of that stuff because I mean, I don't mean sassy. I mean smart. Like you're smart, right? You got. So your kids are smart. You say they're their own and everything, but come on, like you went to UC Berkeley and you were quite the student, weren't you?
I did.
Brag on yourself.
My husband went to Berkeley as well, and he teases me a little bit because we weren't dating when we were at Berkeley, but he remembers me as sitting in the middle of the front row in every lecture. And you know, those kids that sit in the front row, you know who they are, and that's who I am. And it was like, I was all in. I was very focused. I was also from somewhat of a financially challenged family. I'm one of 4 girls, and we're all very close in age. And I had done the, you know, very easy math to figure out that if I stayed in college the full 4 years, my parents were going to end up with 3 kids in college at the same time. And I just couldn't really bear that. It just felt like that wasn't cool. And I felt like I had the multitasking and intellectual ability to push through and get my degree in 3 years. And so I just at some point when I was about 19 decided I'm going to get this degree at Berkeley in 3 years. And I just set a plan and I did it. And I said, hey, mom and dad, I'm guess what? I'm graduating in May, just to kind of free up space for the next kid a little bit. I wouldn't recommend that necessarily to everyone. You know, it's like, it's a way that you kind of rush through college and you miss a little bit of a part of your life that you can't get back. So I'm like the flip side with my own kids. I'm like, take your time, go to graduate school, you know, all the things that, you know, I was probably more financially driven, but just, kind of got out in 3 years with high honors, and I earned my Phi Beta Kappa certification. I did do very well academically. I killed myself. And I also held down a job where I worked 25 hours a week, you know, just trying to pay the bills. And so it was, you know, I am someone that works really hard. I mean, I will say that about myself. But you know, I love my time at Berkeley though. It's a beautiful campus. Has a lot of history. It's, you know, a lot of political kind of history and drive. And it was just fascinating to be there. And I still feel very drawn there and, you know, love visiting, you know, so.
I love that. That's good. My dad was born in Berkeley.
Really?
Yeah, he did not go to UC Berkeley though.
Yeah. Berkeley's a cool town.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, which row do you think I sat in as a child? It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead and say it.
Well, just based on kind of the way you're asking the question and the way that you kind of chuckled at my response, I think you might have been a back row type, but I'm not
being
judgy. I'm just picking up on little cues.
Yes. That's why. Until I got to college, then I was a major front row student.
Yeah. Because I feel like college is like you've made a decision, like you're all in. You know, this isn't something you're just being sent off to school by your parents or whatever. It's like, when you choose college, usually, you know, you've made a personal choice. And I think there is more investment there on you know, as far as that goes.
Yeah. Okay. So my dog is making sounds behind me. He's licking his bowl to let me know that he's hungry. Mr. Tumnus, go lay down, buddy. Go lay down. Yeah, we're Narnia fans here. So you want to Mr. Tumnus? This is Mr. Tumnus.
Oh my goodness, huh?
Oh.
So we have our first dog. That is an important thing to know about me, is that we have always been a cat family. Or I converted my husband 30 years ago from, you know, he grew up with dogs and I was like, nope, I don't do dogs. And so we did cats for 30 years. And just 4 months ago, we adopted a rescue lab from Homeward Bound. And so this is a new thing for our house, that we have this dog. And she was in really bad conditions with a breech in Oregon, and she was overbred, and she has metastasized mammary cancer. And so we just took her. We just felt like something in our heart. We never had a dog, but we saw her on their website. And we just thought, like, we both had this immediate feeling she was meant to be with us. And she kind of gave us nothing. Like, there was no wag of the tail. There was no look in the eye. There was like, this dog wanted nothing to do with us, wanted nothing to do with humans. And we were just like, is this the first dog we're going to take? Because, you know, we're inexperienced dog owners, but we took her home, and she has like transformed our lives in, what has this been now? You know, 4 months. Yeah. And so we like are doing the dog thing, and we're all in.
I love that. You know, it's funny when you said first dog, I immediately thought of first in the political sense, like first lady. and then I thought that actually is a good question for you. I don't see you as a first lady, but I do see you as the first woman president. Would you ever do it? Would you talk about that? Would you? Are you that type? Are you the first woman president?
I would love to see a woman as president soon. And I just to return to your first comment, I do laugh because my husband calls himself first gentleman here in Folsom. Anyway, as far as the president questions, that's very flattering. I have lived and worked in Washington, D.C. actually. And that's not my gig. It was fine for that time period, but I really like local government, and I've worked at all levels. I've worked in federal government, state government, and local government is honestly where the rubber meets the road. Like you can actually really see if I get an idea about something and I start working on it and I start building a team to move toward a goal, I can actually see it all the way through to completion. And then when I'm out walking or driving or whatever, I can go, oh yeah, that I know exactly how that happened. And I was involved in these steps and so was involved in those steps. And oh, I remember those challenges. And it's awesome to see it through. I think the larger you get in terms of the bureaucracy, it kind of gets lost in that maze a little bit. And I don't think, not that I've ever had a shot at being the first woman president, but I think it would be a little bit of a struggle for me to just, not be able to really see the full execution of things in a reasonable time period that was meaningful to me. Plus, I would never leave Folsom because I'm kind of obsessed with Folsom. So that'd be a problem also. I don't think they'd want the president based, the White House probably wouldn't be based in Folsom, is my guess.
Yeah. Well, I could see how that would be frustrating for a change agent, like somebody who needs to see something to fruition. So that's great. Right. You're obsessed with Folsom. What, besides, making change in city government, what keeps you here for 30 years, 30 plus years, right?
Yeah. I mean, this wasn't the childhood that my children experienced growing up here was not the childhood I had at all. I mean, it's like we moved often. We did not put down deep roots. I did not have the traditional, started in elementary school, went to middle school, went to high school, had all those buddies, and then moved on to college. Like none of that. It didn't look like that at all. And so this model is this has been an amazing place for us. What keeps us in Folsom is, and I think you know this, John, when you drive into Folsom, you're in Folsom. It looks different, it feels different. There are clear sort of both, natural dividers that, where the river, that make us Folsom in a lot of ways. We don't feel like a blur of suburbs. It doesn't feel like, one just stretches to the next, to the next, to the next. We're distinct, and that's part of our motto, distinctive by nature. And it's interesting when you talk to people in Folsom, and we're the same way. When you say, oh, you live in Folsom, almost right on the heels of that, they'll say, I live in the historic district. I live in the Parkway. Oh, I'm over in Briggs. They've got these, they identify very, very strongly with their neighborhoods. And I love that too. And I think that that's unusual for cities. And we are part of that. We have really, really deep roots in our neighborhoods and made lifelong friends that way. And it's just this icing on an unbelievable cake to have landed a job in Folsom where I can mesh that personal and professional. So it's everything. It's the whole package. It's the people, it's the nature, it's the gem of the historic district. It's pretty special, and you don't find, I've never seen a city quite like it, honestly.
Yeah, it is a special place. So when you and the first gentleman go out at night, where do you spend your time in Folsom?
So the first gentleman and I are on the city manager's schedule, which is I am an interesting person because I have my on my other side of the family, my grandparents were ranchers, and it's there's this thing I also think in my genetics of I have always been a person that gets up at the crack of dawn. I am up usually at 4:30. I am running on the trails by about 5:30, and I'm usually in the office by 7. And yet, so then you can cycle that through and imagine I'm not particularly someone who's out on the town in the evening. So let's just talk in general about out on the town during the day, because I'm not much of a night girl. But I would say when we're out and about, we spend most of our time, we like to walk Sutter Street. That's still a thing with us. We like to poke into, especially now that we can, poke into, try little restaurants, poke into little stores. We're big lately into kind of the dog stuff. We've tried, sparkles, to go and wash the dog. We go into we go to the farmer's market and we're buying treats for the dog. We eat out quite a bit, all over town. And, and like I mentioned, I run the trails, and then we take a lot of long walks on the trails as well. So that's, not too exciting, but that's kind of what we do. When our kids were home, we were all in on sports. Our kids, between the two of them, were competing in 4 different sports. So it was like, there was a span of time where our whole life was just, sitting on 110-degree stands in cities all over the state and doing that. And so that was kind of our life then. Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys come in to reset sometime soon then.
We will come. We will 100%. 100%. Count on it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Now we have seating back, and we're going to have seating outside soon too. So
that's good. We've been working really hard to make sure that, the Sutter Street merchants have a place to expand so you can have your social distancing and get as many customers as possible.
Yeah, that is good. By the way, I've never said the sentence, I hit the trails by 5:30 in the morning. That's actually, those are the first time that those words have ever come out of my mouth.
This is, I would have to say that those were words that would have never come out of my mouth a few years ago. I kind of like to tell a story that my father passed away very unexpectedly about 5 years ago, like very unexpectedly. He was diagnosed with metastasized cancer on October 31st, and he died on December 23rd. And it was just like really quick. And I say this because my dad was a lifelong marathon runner. And my dad ran and ran and ran and ran. And in the early days after his death, I went out on a run, and I am never run. I didn't even know what the heck I was doing out there. And I just went on a run because I was just trying to find a way to connect with my dad. As I ran, whether it was just my brain doing this or whatever, I did feel that I had a conversation with my dad, and I ran with my dad that morning. And I just kind of took it from there, and it started with my dad, and it just became more of a this was important for me to keep my head on straight as I do this really hard job. And it was important for me to kind of just keep my dad there a little bit, So I do run. I'm not one of those runners. I run at a pace that you'd find very amusing, but I run 6 days a week, and it's important to me, so that's what I do.
Well, one of the big goals of these coffee combos is to bring the human element to the people in our neighborhood, and that's super touching. Thank you for being vulnerable and transparent with that. I love that. Thank you. Do you have a favorite Folsom Park?
Yeah, well, I would say for sentimental reasons, Cone Park, which is right by Oak Chan Elementary School.
Yeah.
It's a pretty simple park, but it's just totally sentimental because it's the park that was close. It's still close to our current home, but it was close to the home when our kids were really small. And so we would, because it's often so hot here in the summer, for example, we would be up very early because kids are up very early. And we'd always walk down our little trail to the park, and we'd put them in swings. And I have so many pictures of both of them, each of them in those little bucket swings. And we would be pushing them, and they'd both fall asleep on cue because of just the lulling of the swing. And they just tilt over and they'd fall asleep in the swings. And then my husband and I would sit on a bench and talk for, until they woke up. And it was just, I can sit at that park today and still hear their little voices.
You're gonna make me cry.
Well, no, but it's true. I mean, it's like there's every part of that park, and it looks about the same as it did when they were small. I can identify in a really personal way with, I remember, Ryan doing this. I remember Paige doing that. I remember when we were all in the sandbox over there. And so it's an old memory, but it's like, I have to say, we have a lot of beautiful parks, but, and Cone is a pretty simple one, but that's the one for me because I can just conjure up like my whole married adult lifetime right there. Yeah.
I love that so much. You actually did make me cry.
Well,
it's like, man, these kids grow up so fast. And yesterday, my grandkids, I was hanging out with them, and I was like, what in the world is happening?
Yes.
It's so big.
And yet they tell you that, and I remember people, it goes so fast, it goes so fast. And I remember my husband and I very determinedly, when our kids were growing, he would even say, I remember one time my daughter could, she was so small that she could stand under the countertop, she was so little that her head, the counter was over her head. Mm-hmm. And I him stopping all the chaos of our household, and he's like, Elaine, remember this moment when Paige could stand under the counter? She was so small. And like I can today remember that. And yet we tried really intentionally through their whole childhoods to kind of sometimes just stop each other and go, stop, remember this, remember this, remember this. And yet still, I can't grasp that I have a 23-year-old person that I created and a 21-year-old person. And I probably, it's very likely in the next, 10 years, I'm going to have some grandchildren, probably. I mean, my husband, hopefully my son and daughter aren't watching this going, good God, mom. But it's like, this is weird. Like, how did I get to be this age? And how did they get to be that age? It does go so fast. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think I was 42 when I became a grandfather. So
okay. Yeah.
it's crazy. I mean, and you're still in your 30s, so you got a little ways to go. That's
you're so kind. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Hey, Elaine, if I was financially independent and I had $10 million of disposable income and I handed it to you and said, invest it in Folsom, where would you invest it?
Okay, so this is where my really super boring pragmatic side comes in, and I know that my answer would be, John, that I would sock it away in the city's reserve fund. And that is the most boring answer I can possibly give. And I'm so sorry. But yeah, okay. Yeah. But the reserve fund is, it's our rainy day fund for the city. And it's what saved us that was my husband just dropping off coffee for me. He's so sweet. He comes to the office every morning and drops it off.
Like a first gentleman should.
So yeah, very, very nice. But we have a reserve fund, and in the recession, we drained it down to really low just to get through the recession. We had socked it away for years, and it paid off in the recession. And now in the middle of this pandemic, we're drawing on those funds again, and we'll have to draw on more in the coming year. So it's so boring, but if I had $10 million, I would stick it in that reserve fund because, we all know the economy cycles, and a lot of cities don't look ahead like that. And you see it all the time. Cities go bankrupt, and you have to be vigilant. And it's hard because it's really easy to look at the number. You might look at the total in that rainy day fund and go like, come on now, like, loosen up, do this, do that. We've got all these cool things we want to do, but it's like, you got to be ready for stuff like this. And it happens, So boring answer, but true.
No, that's a great answer. Did you ever watch Parks and Rec? Did you ever watch that show?
So, okay. So I don't watch it. But you sent me a list of questions and you said you might be asking me that. And my son, Ryan, has always watched Parks and Rec. And so when I saw that question, I cracked up and I FaceTimed him and I said, I'm being interviewed by someone who asked me if I watched Parks and Rec, and now I'm doomed because I can't watch Parks and Rec, before this interview. And then I said, he also asked if I'd like Leslie Knope and would I be friends with her? And I said, so what do you think, Ryan? And Ryan immediately said, you would love Leslie Knope. And then of course my son is a little different from me. Ryan is very snarky. And so I didn't quite trust his answer, and I was a little suspicious. And so I started probing. I said, why would I like Leslie Knope, Brian? Because I just felt like he was setting me up a little bit.
Sure.
And this is all without me watching the show. So John, you're going to have to help me here. But Ryan says that I would like Leslie Knope because she is super organized, enthusiastic, and she's all in on public service. Those were his words. And so he said, so I think you would like her, but I kind of feel like she might be maybe a little bit obnoxious. I'm not sure. He didn't say that, but so I might be a little obnoxious too. But anyway, he says that I would be friends with her. So I'm going to trust my snarky 23-year-old, and I'm going to go with that answer.
He gave you a good answer. Yeah, I would say she's intense about things.
Okay.
Maybe that's
really all in.
But she loves that city.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
So that's good, and she's super funny. So yes. You need to watch that show.
That's what he has told me that like every week of the last 15 years, I think. So yeah, I need to.
Well, if you were mentoring me to become a city manager, what qualities and skills do you think that I would need to sharpen?
I would bet you already have most of them, John, honestly.
That's kind.
I mean, seriously, especially with, your reset, your your reset overall, your reset cafe, being able to multitask, and still be, trying to juggle 100 things every day, but still have your eye on your mission or where you're trying to get to is super important. Just not losing sight of that. Not losing sight of the need to communicate to different people in different ways to push out your message. For you, it's marketing your business. And honestly, from what I've seen, you're kind of brilliant in that area,
Nice.
that is more and more important in this world, so I think it's the multitasking, and it's don't neglect the people you really need to communicate to, because it's easy to do that. You like, for, in your world, you might get so in on like, I got to get my employees trained, and I got to make sure this and that, and we got to get the operations of the business running. And maybe you're really immersed in logistics. And then you go, wait, I got to get the customers in here, so how do I reach the customers? And I can't assume everybody's on social media, so there's other, and it's like, and that's the same thing I'm doing. It's like, I've got, 400 plus employees. I got to make sure I'm talking to them, and they're all in different departments, and they're doing different things. I've got a city council and a mayor that I need to be sure that I'm talking to. I've got business owners like you that I need to be talking to. I've got residents I need to talk to. I've got my fellow city managers. I've got state leaders, federal leaders. So you got to be sure that you're carving out your pie so that you're, balancing all of that. And then you got to find the space for yourself somewhere, and that's a piece of it too.
Yeah, good.
That's the running piece. Yeah.
Good. I appreciate that. I could talk to you all day. You're very easy to talk to. We try to keep this to about 30 minutes though. So maybe I'll just ask you a couple more questions. Like,
sure. Yeah.
What do you do to reset?
What do I do to reset? So I think lately, because during this pandemic, and it's been, I was counting back, it's been about an 11-week stretch that we've been at this. And this is not dramatic. This is not an exaggeration. That has just been like one long day for me. Like, it doesn't ever seem to stop. And I started this with an emergency surgery the first week of, believe it or not, I had a ruptured appendix the first week of this whole crisis. So,
oh no.
I was in the hospital. I had to recover from surgery. I got some awful virus that was not COVID. But I was like running the whole city from an isolated bedroom in my home. And then I had to get back to City Hall. So anyway, we've kind of hit a rhythm now where the way we seem to reset as a family is Saturday mornings. My daughter's home from college because her college is only remote now. So it's me and my husband and daughter living together. And we just, on Saturday mornings, we make it a point to go out and hit a place to have a pastry and a beverage, and just, we were picking it up before, and now we're settling in on a patio and we're just talking. Do the exact same thing on Sunday morning, and then I go to church virtually. And then each of those days I do my run to balance out all that carb work that we put in on Saturdays and Sundays. And that's kind of how I reset. I also, I like to read a lot. So when I can find time, I will just snuggle up and grab my Kindle and read. And that it's just trying to find moments where I can kind of turn my brain off a little bit. Cause as you may tell from talking to me, my brain, there's a lot going on, and I need to slow myself down, and those kind of things help me slow myself down.
Well, I know a perfect place you can do all those things.
I'm coming. I'm coming for you, John. I'll be there.
Elaine, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you, or any final words you want to give everybody?
Yeah, I guess the final words I'd want to give everybody is that, this is an opportunity for the world to reset. I mean, honestly, and I think you're keenly aware of that. I have a feeling there's meaning behind the word of your cafe, and I pick up on that. And it's like this, there are a lot of silver linings here. This is terrible for so many families, and people have died, and this is really serious, and I don't want to diminish this, but I think we're going to come out better. I really feel like that. And I think that people just need to continue to believe that. and try to, as best they can, just do your best. I tell my kids this all the time, just try your best. What is the most positive thing you could say or do today? Like what is, without being Pollyanna-ish, but like, don't just, jump on some social media chat and just say the most, negative thing you can think of saying, just because that's going to get a lot of likes and generate a lot of discussion. How about look around and just see what amazing business owners like you and amazing people out in the community are doing, and food drives are happening and all kinds of special things that just, we all came together to get through this, and it's just going to get better and better from here. And we will always kind of remember this time, and it makes us, I think, more grateful for what will come. And I just ask people to just continue to think positive and know that this reset is, I think, going to be good for everyone in the end. So just stay focused and stay safe.
That's good. Good words from somebody who doesn't want to be president, but I would vote for.
You're so kind. Thank you. Love your hat, John, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. There's nothing going on up there, so there needs to be something. And this, especially in COVID times, has got to be a bit, sometimes it gets unruly.
It's very on point though in COVID times, especially, John. It's very on point. It's just, this is the look, so that's perfect. Perfect.
Well, thank you. Elaine, thanks for spending time with us today.
Of course, John. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon at Reset, okay?
All right. Peace, love, and daily resets to you.
All right. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.